I want to talk today about a profound human reality, and that's thought. Thought is something that we link together with other physiologic properties like digestion, like respiration. But I'm going to make an argument to you that thought is different. Thought is transcendent, and thought is profound. So I'm going to take the last page of my presentation, I'm going to move it forward, because there are two things I want you to remember. And the first one is this. Very simply, the manifestation of thought to us reveals this. Genius is our birthright, and mediocrity is self-imposed. Genius is our birthright. Yet we live under a cognitive yoke, an intellectual tyranny that restricts the full capacity of human thought. We're locked into a perceptual reality that is largely a myth. And I want to unpack this a little bit, because our brains are uniquely optimized for thought. We're gonna develop this a little bit more, so bear with me. But I want to talk about another profound, important, and transcendent reality to genius. And that is, genius is not a fixed reality, but a punctuated experience. I'm going to say that again. Genius is not a fixed reality, but a punctuated experience. Genius is not a smart man sitting in a room with great answers all the time. It's not. And we know that across any discipline, any activity, that we see great thought is often spontaneous and often punctuated in the context of an event that we don't even realize is happening. So that genius experience is something that is profoundly and uniquely accessible to us. So what am I talking about here? How did I get thinking about this? Let's take a page from Albert Einstein's playbook and do a thought experiment. Run fast, hard, sprint, 300 yards. Do you feel the burn? Our physical activity is limited by physiologic function. In other words, the lactic acid that accumulates in our muscles restricts performance. As hard as we try, we can't run forever. We can't sprint forever. We are limited. But conversely, if we think about a thought problem, if we think real hard, we have the capacity to think and think and think. It's not physiologically limited. Don't confuse it with boredom. That's a different thing. But we've all experienced these aspects of thought where things like time went away, where we had profound, important engagements with people, with ideas, with thoughts that lasted almost forever. So our capacity as humans have a fundamentally profound aspect of genius. That genius is not at arm's length, it's at finger's length. It's something that we can tap into very, very closely. Now, who knows this? Kobe Bryant knows this. Rene Descartes, Buddha, Michelangelo. These people have all experienced the genius in a variety of different ways. For Kobe Bryant, it's genius on demand. Well, what does that mean? Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, through systematic program dribbling, through engagement in athletics, reached something called the zone. Again, we've all heard about it. It's no surprise. We've been talking about it for a long time. But this ability to access that genius heightened state of reality is accessible in the context of basketball. Rene Descartes was an accidental genius. He discovered this idea of geometry and changed math through a period of enlightenment, through illumination, partly through a dream. The Buddha, philosophically, reflects this interesting construct of sustained enlightenment. An interesting story about the Buddha. Once the Buddha, Siddhartha, attained this heightened cognitive state, he was walking down a path and someone came up to him and said, "Hey, who are you?" He said, "I'm just a man." But they said, no, you're just not a man. There's something special about you. And the Buddha answered with one word, one simple word. He said, "I'm awake." The way you say awake in the Pali dialect is Buddha. It means to be awake. And by awakening that cognitive process in us, we can transform ourselves and really touch the face of genius. Michelangelo, one of the greatest artists and one of the greatest thinkers in human history, someone who has calculated an IQ of, let's say about 180 or more, defined genius and creation and actually gave us a profound secret that I'll reveal to you shortly. So, what does this have to do with us? Look, I'm no basketball player, right? I'm no mathematician, that's for sure. I'm certainly not the Buddha, and you should see me draw. It's horrific. But the interesting thing is these touch points of genius, these abstract notions of brilliant thought, are things that we touch on every day, things that we experience every single day. And there's no one in this room who hasn't experienced every single one of them. It's yet that we live in this cognitive tyranny that we don't recognize that genius is our birthright. Remember that? Rule number one, genius is our birthright, mediocrity is self-imposed. Rule number two, genius is not a fixed reality, but a punctuated experience. And recognizing it's that punctuated experience gives us the psychic permission to accept the fact that that genius is part of our birthright. So the 5 touch points of genius, how have we experienced this? And how is this materialized in our life? Number one, time slows down. We know this through scientific experimentation, but we've also experienced it personally, the notion of time slowing down. When Michael Jordan plays basketball, the game progression in his head is slow. The poetic movement is slow and extraordinarily well performed because it happens in slow motion. Sometimes time actually speeds up. Now, how many people in this room have ever used the phrase, time flies when you're having fun? We've all experienced this. This change in time passage is part of the genius experience that is immediately and directly accessible to us all. Infinity is a wonderful philosophical construct, and I would argue that nobody knows what infinity is. Everybody gets it wrong. Infinity is a really, 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 really long thing, right? I don't think so. The philosophical interpretation of infinity is the timeless moment that exists now. Because if you think about it, what is the past? The past is a present memory. The future isn't here yet. All we have is that moment of now. And that moment that transcends time is an experience that we've all talked about. It's called being in the moment. How many of us experienced that? Whether it be in a relationship, at work, out in a park on a summer day. Being in the moment is another touch point of that genius experience. That is our birthright. That visceral feeling. You know, our neocortex, the thinking man's brain, is a blessing and a curse because it paralyzes us with data. We analyze and analyze and analyze. But our limbic brain, that fight or flight response, that reptilian brain, tells us something that doesn't have the capacity for language. It just says, it feels right. And again, we've all experienced that notion where we say, I can't tell you what it is, but I know it's right, or I know it's wrong. It's just that feeling. That, what you and I feel all the time, is the genius experience. And interestingly, 99%, actually 1/1,000,000th of the sensory input that makes its way to our brain, 1/1,000,000th makes its way to consciousness. Think about that for a second. 1/1,000,000th of the sensory input that comes to our brain emerges as consciousness. Where's all the rest of that data? Where's all the rest of that information? It's called intuition. It's called gut response. It's called visceral feeling. It's called genius. Some of that data we don't want processed because it's respiration and physiologic function, but much of it builds a cognitive reality that is very, very important. Interconnectedness is very interesting because we all have had the time where we've completed someone else's sentence, where I said, I know what you're thinking. That's beyond just an accident. That's a synchronicity of cognition, coherent cognition. We know of twins who have amazing connectivity. And if you really want to push on that a little bit further, if in fact we all are connected in some profound, transcendent way, the notion of the individual genius doesn't even exist. And it begins to establish a notion of a collective genius, a singular intelligence, which is quite profound. Spontaneous and joyous illumination, I love. I just like to say it. I'm going to say it again. Spontaneous and joyous illumination. Sounds pretty good, right? It feels saintly, you know? It's almost religious. No, it's something we've all experienced. You just know it by a different name. It's called the aha moment. It's called the light bulb over your head. How many times have we experienced that? That almost thought nirvana that can change us. That's really, really interesting because genius is not only our birthright, it's a punctuated experience. It's not a sustained reality. The aha moment is our genius moment. And we have to embrace them and use them very, very effectively. So I want to talk about Michelangelo briefly because he defines creativity in many ways. And he defines it by creating something that we all know. We all know that the ceiling in the Sistine Chapel has this beautiful artwork. And that artwork defines humanity. And in the center, there's this piece of art called creation. That spark of genius, that spark of innovation that establishes the connection between man and God. And if you take a careful look at this, what do you see? Two hands that are touching, almost like a neural synapse. But if you take a closer look, you find one of the biggest secrets in human history. A secret worthy of a doctoral dissertation or a Hollywood movie. It's where God rests in that visual. And resting where God is the exact neuroanatomy of the human brain. Not something close, not an arbitrary almost there, the exact neuroanatomy of the human brain. What was Michelangelo telling us when he was talking about creation, about that moment of inspiration, about that profound element that makes us perhaps part divine and part human? Kobe Bryant teaches us on the basketball court how to be a genius. Descartes instructs us in a textbook. The Buddha gives us a path for life. Michelangelo gives us a profound secret that is revealed on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And that simple secret is, genius is our birthright and mediocrity is self-imposed. Thank you all very much.